I know you cannot share much about it, but why don't you talk about how you're leveraging AI to achieve your goals? Can you talk about it? If you can, it
Yeah.
would be great to know. Yeah.
Um, so I guess I knew about agentic AI before,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm realizing its use case now more intensely after I worked my internship this summer, working directly with Copilot agents, and now I'm looking at how most online AI tools use GPT-4 and large language models to deliver tasks, and I'm learning how the whole process works with APIs and everything.
Yeah.
So I think with proper prompting and proper, if you integrate coding logic with large language model, you can get you can achieve a lot of cool things because the large language model does the thinking for you. It's kind of like the brain, even though it's not really thinking, but you can kind of think of it as the brain behind it, and then you can integrate with coding and logic to do actual things because with a large language model, you have very limited input and output. If you just search up ChatGPT, right, you can give it text input and get text output, and now you also get image output, but it's very limited, right? You input text, you output text. So if you want to use that to do an external thing, like whether that's making like a health chart for you, or you wanted to make like a online like map tracker to find restaurants that fit some kind of criteria. That's where it gets kind of hard for the user because the user has to do a lot more work on their end to use the text output or the image output for their purposes. So that's where all like the startups that will be in the next few years will all be around using ChatGPT or GPT-4 or any large language model, taking the language output and using code and logic to build it into something that a user can use. It's getting increasingly popular, and it's really easy to set up and use with how many tokens you're given for such a low price. So I really want to leverage that now while it's popular and while I have the skill set to actually know how it works. So and I just started using Cursor a few days ago. I didn't realize how strong Cursor was because I remember I heard about Cursor on one of Lex Freeman's podcast a while back,
Yeah.
and I thought it was some small thing that I didn't really understand it at the time. And I think you even mentioned that when you watched the podcast, it sounded kind of naive, and
Mm.
that was the kind of image I built of it in my head. But then as it's with time, it's grown to be such a big thing, and most major companies have like Cursor licensed now, and I've been using it. It's like such a powerful tool to have like AI integrated into VS Code. So I
Yeah.
think with all these tools now, it's the best time now for CS startups, and I think it will be that way for the next couple of years. So it's really the best time to ride that wave and see what we can make. So
Yeah, I remember that episode. I think it's about 6 months back. Lex recorded that. I believe he had four founders,
yeah,
if I
for
recall it right, and he had all four of them in one episode, all sitting around a couch, all young people like you, either in school or just graduated and trying to create this cool thing. And yeah, I remember talking to you about it. That time, I thought that it was right in the infancy state of what they are trying to do with coding and everything else. But now it is really popular. I recall you recorded someone from, I think, alumni of UMich in New York, and in her company she's also using Cursor, I believe, for some robotics thing that they're building for the Navy. So yeah, it's pretty popular. I see Cursor more often in enterprises trying to use the skills of Cursor to build new gen applications. So it's pretty cool.
have you seen it at all when the work you done with like HCL or anything? Like, have you seen them utilize something like that or?
Yeah, we have our own tool set in our company. We call it as AI Force. It's public, so I can name it, and we have built it over a period of time. And
It's made by
sure,
HCL, right?
yeah, it sure does connect to all of the other tools that are available in the market space, like Llama or Copilot and all. But it has ingrained built-in engine for doing similar concept for us, right? So we do use that. But yeah, but as you know, I'm writing a book for Springer again on AI, and um, the whole book is about web development and how you can leverage AI for writing website from the scratch using some of the technologies like React, Node.js, and others. There's a chapter I'm dedicating to prompting, which I was talking to you about, and it is fascinating to learn. Of course, I cannot do justice just in one chapter, but from the pretext of what the book is all about, which is about web development. I was trying to give 9 different ways you can prompt and giving examples. So linking it back to Cursor, I mean, again, Cursor is also a input output engine. So how beautifully you craft your prompt will result will provide the result accordingly, right? So and it is important that you learn the tricks of prompting, and again in niche in the area of coding as well, so you can bring it all together for truly creating code or structures or everything around it which is meaningful and would need less iteration to create the product of your choice. Yeah, so yeah, that's also very important. Yeah.
Can you talk more about how we write good prompts from what you've learned from your research? Like how, as anyone in CS or anyone in just using AI in general, how do they write good prompts?
It's a practice, but there are different kinds of prompting, right? And there are prompts which will write, zero prompts, which are predominantly the LLM has been trained. As you know, LLMs are nothing but they're trained on humongous amount of data, and they understand all the relationship between that, and they're pre-trained. And as you know, I don't want to be sure acquire, but LLM works on that zone that it appreciate and understand huge amount of copious amount of data relationship amongst them, and then it can create new content, right, based upon the prompt you create. So I'll give you two, three extremes. I mean, there are different ways to prompt. The one extreme is like zero prompting, right, where you simply ask a question and you trust the knowledge of the LLM to give you the answer. Like for example, you can simply say, "Tell me everything you know about cortical," right? Or you can write a prompt by saying that, "Give me, give me a hello world example in React," right? So you're not giving any substantial information to that, and you're trusting the LLM to give the answer. There's nothing wrong in that. In simple, straightforward, information that you need, it can truly work out well. But then you have prompts where you provide a lot of context to the LLM engine so that it can orient itself well to provide you the answers. Something like, think of that you go to your prof for asking clarification. There is one point to say that teach me how to do regression analysis, right? In other ways, trying to tell him or her that where you get stuck, what are the areas that you need to focus on, and then providing that background, your prof will know it better to explain you. Same thing with prompting as well. That when you, the second way of prompting is you give a lot of context, for example, examples of what you're looking for. Like for example, you can say, tell me everything of cortical, but let's say you're an adventurous person. So you provide more prompting by saying that, look, I as a person love adventure. I'm here to visit for 2 days. By the way, I'm there in the summer months, so that you're giving more context to it. And tell me everything which are outdoor adventure thing I can do in Kotikok in the month of July, or something on those lines. Now you're giving a lot of context. So instead of giving the LLM engine giving you a prompt, you giving a prompt and giving an overall answer. Now it knows the context. Those are basic level, but there are other prompts as well. Like for example, tree of thoughts, where you can create different trees of thoughts, and you can provide or ask LLM to provide the best possible answer for you, which predominantly is, think of a tree has branches, right? So every branch kind of links back to the stem. So your core theme, if I take the same example, corticoc, but you can give different instances and example. For instance, you can say that adventure, but for the age group of XYZ, adventure, but where I predominantly can only do can only take risk in ABC region, right? So you're trying to provide different aspects to it by forming a tree-based prompting model, and let the LLM decide that which are the different combination of answer you can give, and then you can further ask that same answer. You can narrow it down by saying that now that you give me 4 5 options based upon what I provided you, you can tell more about what you're looking for, and it can help you to narrow down the answer. So there are, to write a different, I think I would say first and foremost that take a class on prompting. There are many classes available, free classes available. If you're Coursera, there are beautiful, wonderful classes available. I think MIT and Stanford also offers a few. So take a general course on prompting. And second, think of prompting as asking question to anyone, like a prof or to any any knowledgeable person, the more context you give, the more information you provide, the better answer you can get. If that makes sense.
That's interesting. I don't really get like the tree of thoughts prompting. So like, can you give an example of like a prompt?
Yeah. So let's say I'll take a example of let's say coding only, because we went to that topic before. So let's say you want to create a React based UI for displaying images. Now, there are many ways an image can be displayed, right? One could be like the whole screen is taken by one image, and then you have maybe a button or maybe a swipe, whatever you can. So whatever the gesture you want to use, you swipe and you get the next image. So one image at a time. The other could be a carousel-based images, right? You get 5 images. Moment you move your hand or your cursor, whatever it is, that image becomes big, and then it provides you the notion. The other could be that you have a rectangular image, right? Like how you see in Instagram, where different photos are put together. Now you're trying to design a image-based application, maybe it's a section in an app. So one way to do the tree is that you can ask different kind of image combination. Those could be the different combination. That's one side of it, right? The other side is you give more context. What is these images for? Are these images for travel place, or are these images for food or ancillary stuff, right? Then you can give further more context by saying that lay it out on a website where image will only take maybe 1/4 of the screen. Now these are different trees of thoughts, because you also do not know what will best work for you. Maybe LLM also would not know, because sometimes how the images will be laid out, you know, it all depends on the context of the website or the app that you're creating. So by providing different trees of thought, you can get options in front of you, and then either you can select or you can let LLM to select. That's what I meant, if that makes sense.
So basically, like you're given a lot of options of like, I'm trying to achieve this goal, but like there are different like methods we can do it. So you list them all out that you can think of, and then kind of give it all to the LLM and kind of let it decide or figure it out.
Yeah, and it's like the stem is the core. The stem of the tree is core here is displaying image, but the branches are different option that you're giving it. And then you can also start with one prompt. You can also keep prompting the same prompt. You can narrow. It's like a funneling approach. You can start with the abstract model, then you can narrow it down further. Yeah. So yeah, more or less something on those lines.
Gotcha. Can you explain how you used AI to build like the website you make, for example, or anything else you made with AI? Because I know that it was primarily coded fully by AI. So like, what was like the relationship between like you, like what you use and how you made it?
Okay, so it might go a little technical, you know, and I pardon the other audience if they only want to hear the abstract part. I'll do that as well, and then go a little technical maybe. I think first and foremost, I built the entire website. The entire coding was done by LLM, right? So Perplexity or Cursor, either one can work out really well. The first thing I want to highlight is that LLM is an input-output engine, right? So you need to architect your solution well. So the end goal has to be very clear in terms of what you're creating. So in this case, the architecture of what I want to display cannot be done by the LLM. That you need to do, right? So I had a vision of what I want to create, and for that I did the architecture level design myself. I did not ask LLM to do the architecture design, because it didn't have a reference point to start with, and it may sway and end up anywhere else. So I wanted to make sure that I can create it accordingly. You can always ask the LLM for the choice of technology, but at the end of the day, you have to decide what you need to do. So just to let you know, I use VS Code, which I think you're also using for all my coding purpose. VS Code is linked to my GitHub, which predominantly is storing all my files, which are my source code file, and anything else that goes in the web server. Then I chose Vercel for my deployment server, which is where the website is hosted. Think of that as a hosting server where it is hosted and the URL is shown. Obviously.
So what was your decision process like for all these things?
Yeah, I'll just let you know. Okay. Let me finish that. So I had Vercel for my deployment process, and then I have all the data. I didn't want to store it in a web server on the web page. It has to dynamically generate, right? Presumably, content will be generated over a period of time as we visit different places. So I wanted to have data in a repository. For that, I used MongoDB, which is where I stored the data. and for entire building purpose I use React, because it's a more front end based. So React, as you know, has it's a JavaScript tool or utility which uses JavaScript for a lot of the UI based function that I need to do. More or less, I think that was my tool set. Well, in terms of choice of technology, what I did was, VS Code was something I was comfortable with, so I went ahead with that. So it's
Was
not.
Cursor out at the time when you started, or?
No, I
Okay.
use Perplexity most of the time for getting my code done, right? So yeah, so GitHub was, so for GitHub and for VS Code, I didn't ask anyone to suggest me. It was predominantly GitHub is the area to go for all your source code. You can make public, private, code base share, and all this cool stuff that you can do. So those two are simple to decide. I think the others were I used my or ChatGPT or whatever you want to call React and others. Sorry, Perplexity and others to decide. So I wanted to make sure that I have the rich amount of functionality today and for tomorrow for the website. And React, I asked the right prompt to it by saying what are different frameworks available, and it gave me a scores of different framework from Node.js to React to Springer to everything that is available. And I did my reading, so it's not that I blindly said LLM you decide. So I asked for all the necessary frameworks available, giving the background what I'm trying to do, and it gave me an output. So I read about them and I double click, and I knew that React is the right thing for me. So that's a decision making process from overall
Was
standpoint.
it hard, or what was like the reason you chose React?
No, it was not very hard. You see, I had some knowledge of JavaScript previously, so it was not very hard for me. But once you have the prompt rightly designed in terms of what the pros and the cons and the areas that you want to focus on, it is easier path from there on. Just to let you know, React is Facebook uses React, right? Just to let you know, I wanted a very quick, or a website which can be scalable, which can show content which are heavy on video and audio as well as images to display and render quickly. So those are my criteria just to give it the highest level. So uh, it is not a transactional site. It's not like an Amazon site I'm doing transaction, right? It is more of an informational site, yet there are a lot of content which will come, audio, video, images.
So if it was transactional, would you use a different kind of?
Possibly,
Okay.
yeah, possibly, because see, for transactional, you need to have an e-commerce based engine as well. If I take the Amazon example, so instead of building it out in React, you like to leverage something that is already available, right? So that those are the example criteria. So you need to make sure you ask the right question and make a decision. And similarly, MongoDB I always knew was the best one, and I think I was telling you this morning about MongoDB. I think the best part of MongoDB is that everything is stored as JSON. It's like a object which can be defined on the fly, so I do not have to be rigidly qualified myself as a relational database with a structure that I have to define. It is very fluid in design, and as you know, website grows, concept grows, and I wanted that flexibility there. So those were my first step, which is the tool set. And then all of the integration part, I think you can very easily query a LLM to find out how do you integrate. I'm sure you have done it as well in terms of making sure what are configuration steps. These are easy. You can use single shot prompting as well to make sure you get those answers. It's like how do you connect a VS Code to GitHub, for example, as an instance. I'm taking a simple example. Or how do you ensure that your environment is ready with all of the servers required to run a React-based environment in a local server? Or how do you connect your VS Code to GitHub to Vercel so they can do auto deployment, right? Because you're doing CI/CD coding, right? As you code, as you make changes, it should populate to your GitHub, then transfer to your, if it is production environment, transfer back to your Vercel production environment. You don't want to keep doing that. That is your CI/CD pipeline. So building those fairly easy, I would say, but you can always take cues from your LLM asking those questions. And then comes the coding part. So as I said, the design was yours. So once you design, you're very well defined. It's like an epic story, right? In your agile based form. So write your stories, that's what you need. and then from there, use GitHub Copilot or Cursor. You can give your epic story and if you write prompting, it can actually create your entire code. My word of caution is that don't copy paste the code right away and get it done with. I think there are a lot of nuances that you need to read and ensure that everything is done properly. Reason being is, when you make a website for the public, there are a lot of things you need to take care of: vulnerability, the security aspect for your login, for instance, right? Security from a overall standpoint. All of those aspects you have to make sure that they are rightly done. So my only humble submission: don't just get the code from the epic to the story to your code, and just don't copy paste. Make sure that they make sense to you from overall standpoint. And then performance is the other thing that you need to do your testing according to make sure it's performing well. Yes, those are my high level thoughts on how I've done. So I did straight from design on paper to launching, I think 3 weeks.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you that next. How long did it take you? And was it 3 weeks? 3 weeks of a lot of effort, or 3 weeks of like sporadic time committed? Like how hard was it in the 3 week period? How many hours?
I have a full-time job, as you know, so I think I used to work weekend all. So those days, you were not at home at that time. So I would say
When
that
was this last year?
yeah, sometimes towards the end of last year.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, so I spent about think about 16 hours in the weekend, and then sporadic about 4
16 hours
Yeah, yeah.
total.
Total in the weekend.
Okay, so would you say it was relatively easy or medium hard?
Because you need to know CS stuff. I mean, you just cannot just start like that. Because even you need some bootstrap. But since I have that background, I would say that with that background, it's fairly easy. It was the most of the difficulty was designing part. To be honest with you, not the coding part. How do you want to design? How do you want the image to come together? You can leave the URL in your
we will.
in your description for people to check.
Yeah.
But I think it has come out very neatly, and I think it comes out very cool.
Do you
I'm
wanna-
using. Sorry.
Actually, you finish first.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna ask if you want to share like the overall purpose of the app, just so people know what we've been talking about. The website.
Yeah, so the website is, we called it the halftimewhistle.com. I also have the domain for halftimetravel.com. Concept is very simple that, halftime whistle happens in any game. So when the whistle happens, it's a break you take from your regular game so that you can rejuvenate or take the necessary rest and go back to the game again, right? So halftime whistle is a similar concept that, you need to take break from your routine life, be it work or whatever you do, so that you can travel, you can get that experience. That's the premise of the name. This website is a travel log, so it's about all the different places that I and my family travel. We log those experiences. The intent is fourfold. One is certainly it'll provide a lot of insights to people who are trying to visit, let's say, to Japan, which we did last year. So I'll create like a 12-day itinerary to Japan, so they can actually literally follow that itinerary if they like what we have done, and get their days according to 12 days what we have done. They can follow through, or they can also, let's say, if they're going to a particular place. If I take the same example of Japan, Nikko, for instance, and they want to learn all about Nikko or about the attraction that place, they can get that. So it's about the people. That's the first block. Second is also a chronological order of everything that we as a family has done. So my belief is that when you guys will start traveling with your own family, when you'll have kids and children, they can go back to this website and see everything that we have done as a family together. Hopefully they can carry this family tradition forward. If that's not much to us, hopefully it's someone in our extended family, yours and Nitara, will take that interest to take it forward. So the second
That'd be cool.
purpose is that, it's like, it's a travel log of everything. And third is memories, right? So oftentimes I go back to my previous memory, and clicking is very easy to find out. I remember that debate we had in the car when we were driving from Quebec, that what was that place where there was a big lake that mommy was asking. There's a big lake, and which place did we go to? And she was saying it's Michigan. You said it's Smokies, right? Or near in our Nashville trip.
Yeah.
And while you guys are debating, I quietly went to the website, to our website, And I showed it. Yes, it was in a Nashville trip, not in Smokies, of course. It was in Nashville, and yeah, everyone came. So that's like aha moment. That's the other part, right? So it's about experience of travel, helping others who wants to travel different places, and it's also an outlet for me to express my thoughts and ideas through a website
And writing.
and writing too.
Nice. Um, with the, I mean, obviously you need CS background to be able to build this app, but relatively still easy, and relatively people could figure it out if they tried, maybe a little bit harder. Do you think down the road, companies like WordPress and Wix should be scared, or do you think they'll kind of adapt and integrate AI into their own apps, or will they go out of business, or like what do you think will happen to like most website hosting, or not website hosting, but website building apps that exist?
I think it'll evolve, in my opinion, right? So I could have gone to WordPress and Wix as well, but they are very limited in function. I think they're good for the masses. You know, you have a blog, you want to put it out there. There are copious amount of templates available. You can pick one and get it done, but it is very restrictive in terms of what you do. You are very restricted to the template or to the zone. And me as a person do not like restriction anyways. And it is easy to jumpstart, and you can do that. So let me first tell you why I went. You know, I could have gone to WordPress, but now I have a complete freedom of how I want to present data, and my data is in my database, in my control, rather than putting in general web pages all through, right? So I think that was my intent. To your question, I believe they will adapt. WordPress would still be required to create website for businesses, small time businesses, or those enthusiastic bloggers, or those people who do not have technology at their foray. But I think with the advent of AI and their adaptation, they can take a leap in terms of how the features will develop over time. Today, if you look at WordPress, they provide some default templates, and then you and I can create templates and put it out there either for free or for a charge, right? It's like a marketplace. I think those concepts will dramatically evolve with the advent of AI, and possibly what I have done grounds up. Hopefully tomorrow WordPress and Wix can offer. I don't think they're going to go away, in my opinion.
Do you know if they've already started adding AI to it?
I believe so, yes. They already have. Everyone claims, at least. I have not used it recently, but yeah, everyone claims they have integrated AI for search, integrated AI for different components that they provide on the page, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So do you know if they have an AI component that can build templates too or anything, or that's probably
I
so
would
far?
not know. I have not explored too much.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm curious about how that would look
Yeah.
for websites, but yeah, I'm curious about you recently built, when you built this website, it's probably a very different experience than when you built it years ago. So if you can remember back to the workflow of like how you go about working on a project now versus back then, could you like describe the differences, or like how different is coding now from when it was 10, 20 years ago?
Yeah, I think coding. I started coding long back. I used to write. I've done coding at the C++ level as well for commercial purposes, where you literally write a code for the driver, which can literally work at the machine level to drive things. So I started from that perspective as well. I'll tell you that coding in the recent times has evolved dramatically, and I think it has a lot to do with agile ways of thinking, right? When Spotify came into play, and they designed a way of development where they said that, look, why do we need to go in a traditional way, that there is a team who develops, then there's a team who will deploy, then there's another team who will do production support, right? Any issues coming and all. It's like at the highest level there are 3 or 4 teams, one team doing requirement, one team doing only coding, then another team is doing testing before you release, then one team only focusing on production deployment, then there's another team which has to take it forward from maintenance standpoint. So what Spotify, and you must have heard about agile ways of working, safe agile and other frameworks have done, they fuse this whole model together. And when they fuse the whole model together, they are saying that let the developer have the complete control of everything, right? He can develop, he can test, he can deploy. But to do that, you need to do a lot of scaffolding, or a lot of veneer layers you need to create to abstract the developer away, right? So now if I take you back 20 years back, the entire environment setup was a big deal, and on top of it, to write literally code, lines and lines of code to get certain functionality done. Then you have to integrate, right? Your code has to integrate a larger piece of code which others may be developing. It's a huge mammoth deal, and it's not like something that you can fathom in today's world. But when you do this fusion, as I said, the scaffolding has to be done. So a lot of abstraction has to be done, right? And those abstraction has what has given power to the today's coding. So if I divide them into few layers, the first scaffolding is that what we call it as integrated testing. So today, when you code, your code or using AI or otherwise, your code can go and sit on a platform like GitHub, right? And you can write the code, others can write the code, which are pieces of code coming together. And at the background, they can do the deployment of that automatically to a test environment. And there are test cases which can be automatically written, which will go against it and figure out whether your code is functioning or not based on the test cases that you have, whether it is performing well or not based upon the NFR, which is a non-functional requirement, like how it will perform in load, for instance, or security pen test, for example, to ensure that there are no code leakage which can make your code vulnerable from a deployment standpoint. So those abstraction has truly helped. That's the number one point I want to highlight. Now, you as a coder, you do not have to worry about integrating, you do not have to worry about testing that getting done accordingly, right? And bringing it all together. So that's what I was referring to, was CI/CD pipeline, right? Continuous CI is continuous integration, and CD is continuous deployment, right? So as you code, your code is continuously getting integrated and continuously getting deployed to different environment. It can first get to test, it can automatically test, and it can go to, if required, a UAT environment or straight to production as well. So that's number one, which has truly transformed the game. The second is way we code as well. So earlier, coding was more about a very sequential process of deployment. So I've done that, so I know it very well. So what we used to do is that we used to get the requirement. Let's say you want to build something or whatever that is, then you write use cases for those, and every use case has to have a design document, technical design document, low-level design document. Then you go and code. Very sequential approach, right? These days you can do the agile ways of working, which are Kanban ways, right? So what you can do is everything is I don't want to make this a tutorial for safe agile, but think of as your big stories as epic, which are like the concept. Like for example, I want to build a website to display all of my travel experiences, could be epic. My story could be a page where I'm showing all of the places I've gone in North America or a particular region. Other story could be for that place what I want to display, right? If I take the same example. And then for every story there are different tasks that you have, which are nothing but the Kanban board. So you can actually go down to the bottom of tasks, which you have been showing to me, like the list that you have made. You can throw those tasks, and then imagine now that you have broke down everything to tasks, your test cases are written automatically, deployment is written automatically. Your developers can come together and can work on this individual task without worrying about integration, without worrying on NFR, which is non-functional requirement like security, performance, and others, and without worrying about deployments. It all comes together very fast. So your entire routine becomes really, really agile, which was not the case before. These days, our sprints can run between 2 to 3 weeks to 4 weeks, not more than that. Earlier, it was months. You keep developing for months before you actually go to deployment. So that's the difference, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
I know I've got more into detail, yeah.
It's crazy how fast everything is moving now, because the things that used to be the hardest part before, like how you set everything up with the scaffolding and environment setup and all the tools available, it's like you can run 2 lines in a terminal and everything that would take months is just done in seconds. So
Totally.
now it's almost like I feel like I can do anything even if I have no idea what it is, because it's so easy to learn fast now with the tools available. So I think it's completely changed. I think I have like a lot more confidence with a little bit of knowledge in the background when I go to code, because it's like, even if I have no idea what something means, I know I can learn it in like a day or a few hours of work, because of all you can use large language models, you can learn exactly step by step, it's all out there. before it's good digging through documentation and figure out like how anything works, and now it's so much easier. So yeah, it's hard to even imagine like how we did it before.
Yeah,
But
it was very different.
yeah.
If I want to sum it up, you now only focus on the business logic. Everything else is scaffolding. Your integration is scaffolding, test case is scaffolding. Earlier, you have to think about everything, right? Configuration to how do I log to code syntax to everything else. Now you only focus on the logic, and that logic, if you write a good story, GitHub Copilot or a cursor can write the code for you, right? So that's what you need to focus on. So I think the importance of architecture, designing it right, importance of writing good requirement, just prompting in a way, are the tricks of the trade these days, right? So, and then if you set up the environment well, and bringing up to the point that you were asking before, that a person who doesn't have CS background, can they code? They need to do some orientation, but it will be much more easier. But you need to have the logical mindset that you cannot outsource.
Yeah.
You need to have the architectural mindset that you cannot outsource.
Yeah, the architecture design and like the business logic there, I think those skills are probably going to separate the successful from the not. So
most certainly.
yeah. So was Spotify the first one to kind of establish this?
I think Netflix was the first one. The example I was in Netflix. All
What
this.
year?
When Netflix came, early 2000. I maybe just fact check
When
me
did
on
Apple
that.
start? 'Cause I know they did a really good job of like the scaffolding and organization of things too. So
See, Apple. I think 2006, 2007.
they're all kind of early players. Okay.
I think Netflix, Spotify, these companies transform. I think the example I was giving is not Spotify, it was Netflix. I'm sorry about that. But Spotify, actually, there's the agile ways of working on a Spotify model as well, because what Spotify has created. I think these guys, this Bay Area people who have really created the next stage technology, they truly define and undefine the ways of coding and abstracted everything. And it is charmingly working well. I think they can make thousands of releases in a day without even knowing. For example, Insta and Facebook, the social media channel. We don't even know when they are upgrading, what code they are putting in. We simply one day we just open the Insta and we see a new feature, right? You don't even know. They can actually control to the point that I can first experiment in Australia, maybe Brisbane market first, before I come to the US Dallas market, for instance.
So they
right?
test on certain markets.
Yeah, that's how they do it.
And that makes sense because sometimes you go to a new country and the app will look different or something.
Yeah,
If you
they
see someone's
do
phone.
it. And you don't, and why should a user know? I think the earlier premise was that any change is a big deal, right? I mean, you're making a big release. Trading was a big deal. I think Apple changed that whole game altogether, right? You have to train your people to use the application. Or imagine an Apple iPhone. I mean, kid you not, when you guys are 2 years old, I'll just give the phone to you guys, exactly know what to tap and how to get it. And that's what user interface, graphical user interface is all about.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, they've really transformed everything. It's really changed so much over the
Yeah,
years.
it has.
It's absolutely crazy because I'm just curious like how it'll continue to change and how it'll become easier and easier. And I guess another big question is like how it'll change curriculums in schools because I guess I'm curious about your thoughts on like how education about how to use these new tools should be integrated into education at all levels, including I guess college, something we can start with because do you think that these skills with how to use AI, how to prompt, how to use it for coding should be taught early on in the introductory stages, or do you think they should teach it in the old school way and then kind of bring it on throughout education, or where does learning this come in the whole timeline?
It's a interesting point you made. I don't know where I read, but I was recently reading, and I'm trying to recall where I read. But okay, let me not quote where I read from because I don't want to get myself wrong. But the point made was, if we take, let's say, the common people of today, and let's say the whole world is vanished, and only those, let's say, the common people like you and me are left out. We can't even build a simple thing like what we're seeing around a computer, a mic. All of this we have granted because we have been abstracted from that so much that we can only work on the platform that have been provided to us, if that makes sense. So we've gone so far away from the reality of how simple tools are made. Forget about computers and others. That I don't know if the world vanishes tomorrow. Let's say you and I are there. Can we make a camera tomorrow? I do not know. Maybe the answer is yes, but it will take a lot of iteration, a lot of thinking that has to go in. So coming back to your question, I believe that it has to be a mix of things. We need to teach the fundamentals of what makes computer work. Again, I'm not saying mainframe because it has gone, but at least what you're learning, C, C++ and all. I think that orientation is going to be, in my opinion, very helpful. But again, in the same time, there has to be a fine balance. If you only do that, and let's say you are completely shutting yourself off, and you're just learning C, C++ and everything else, and the college presumes that you learn all of the good way of prompting cursor and on your own, probably you would. I don't think that's the right thing to do. In my opinion, they should include it. Now, you are a CS student, so for you it is easy to get it done. But I think there are some conventional question asked on, let's say, literature, people who are pursuing literature, because obviously you can't ask people to write essays using prompt. But again, that's a question they have to ask, that can LLM be a source of enriching what they are doing, rather than trying to totally shove it off by saying that, look, it is not the right thing. My opinion is we have to embrace things as they come along. Shoving them off or completely discarding them is not going to help anyone. Look at when Uber came into play. Uber actually did not launch itself globally in the US, like in every state. They have to go state by state. Why? Because they have to take permission from the local taxi unions, right? And they were big hue and cry. You were small at that
So
time.
who are they taking permission from? Like the taxi?
Like city, like the city, like New York City.
Why do they have to take permission? Why can't they
Because
just...
there's a union of taxi, right? So if they don't take permission from the city, there's a taxi union, they will go on strike or they will create a ruckus, right? So for example, you just cannot go and start giving Uber to the airport. You have to take permission from the airport authority, for instance.
Really?
Right? Yeah. You just can't go ahead and do that, right? Now, which is rightfully so. You have to take permission, and there were a lot of hue and cry in those days, right? All the taxi operators were like big time no by saying that this is our way of earning, because they were charging a hefty amount. I still recall when I came to the US in 2001, in a taxi ride from Newark to our home, which now cost about, given the time of the day, I know Uber has also increased the price, between $60 to, let's say, $80. It's easily cost me $120, $130, right? So A, their prices coming down, and then B, there's a gain share need you do with Ubers of the world. And C, they didn't even think about going to Uber. They're thinking that my business, our business. Now, fast forward today, even those taxi drivers have converted themselves to Uber, and the market is open. So resisting will not help. I think it will only delay the progress, and you'll be left far behind. Those taxi drivers now have figured out a way to work with Uber or Lyft or the other rideshare provider to get it done. So my opinion is market define itself over time, and similarly the universities and college courses should define themselves over time as well, training the people or the pupils for tomorrow in the right manner. I do not know how you can educate me more how Michigan is doing it, but I don't see much of that incorporated in mainstream yet today. In terms of learning, teaching, they're still going the old school way of teaching. Is that an accurate statement, or did I get it wrong?
Yeah, I've taken 2 courses so far that are coding heavy, and they're pretty introductory courses, so I don't think they're the best way to assess. But for the introductory courses, definitely they have not integrated AI teaching at all. In fact, they typically say to avoid using it, which might make sense because you want to just learn how coding works in the first place, so that's fair.
Yeah.
I think if you know how coding works, then it's only a tool, and I think everyone still uses it. But if you get caught, I think copy pasting code, they're not happy with that.
Which is good, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Sorry.
you should at least learn, I guess. That's
Yeah.
true. At least for introductory classes. Maybe as we go along with time, years will go by, so there'll be more time to integrate it more, and it'll all be more advanced. So there's probably going to be more discussions around it, but I'll have to keep you posted as I go along. But
Okay.
so far, there's no big integration with it.
Which kind of is fair. I think, as I said, it has to be a fine balance. You just cannot say, okay, go use AI, get your all your code done. You will not learn a single bit. Now that you have an appreciation of C++, I think that's what you learn, or C, or whatever you're learning, or Python, for example. Now that when you go and use your cursors of the world tomorrow, you'll be much more educated to debug it or architect it rightfully. So I kind of agree to that, but completely keeping it outside is also something that I believe is not the right thing to do.
Yeah, I agree. I think debugging is a very important skill to learn
Yeah.
early, and there's no other way of doing it than debugging it.
Yeah.
So, I think over the years I've gained that skill, so I'm glad.
Yeah.
But I think debugging forces you to think in a lot of different ways, and you can't
True.
really develop it if every time you have a problem you copy paste in the ChatGPT, because it doesn't always have the right answer for you. So sometimes you have to be smart about things. And if it weren't for debugging skills I learned before,
Yeah.
then if I just went for the AI approach, then some of the projects that I've worked on recently, I would not be able to do them, because oftentimes a debugging idea or the solution comes to my head from like past experience. So I think it's definitely still important on that end.
So in your two projects that you're doing, I know you cannot disclose much, but are you using agentic AI, or
Yeah.
is it the simple you're using AI only for coding, or are you also using agentic AI?
So for the rookie app that I'm working on with the other two co-founders, I think the main use case of AI will be web scraping. So we'll use it to basically get like game scores or anything like that. So that's the main goal for the AI there. And then for my own app, it's mainly just calling GPT-4 for
Getting your stuff
yeah.
done. Yeah. I think agentic AI is another very interesting phenomena which is coming along, right? So,
Amazing.
Good.
Well, yeah, I know I want to keep it short today because you're sick and kind of running low on time. But any other thoughts you want to finish with or anything? Or this is number 113, so I'll give this a repeat.
All right.
It's upstairs.
Yeah, right under my already there. Let's save some space for you.